Phoenix, Arizona made a $65 billion promise, a promise that requires a miracle. And if that miracle fails, the city's future goes with it. Right now, in the heart of the Sonoran Desert, a mega project of almost incomprehensible scale is rising from the dust. The most advanced semiconductor factory on the planet, built by TSMC. A monument to national security. A machine designed to produce the brains of our entire digital world. But it has a fatal flaw. It is impossibly thirsty. The factory sits in a city of over 5.2 million people, all of them surviving in the path of a 1,200-year megadrought. They all drink from the same dwindling source, a river that is already collapsing. By 2028, SMC's 3 fabs will demand over 17 million gallons of water from that system. Every single day. Not a request, not a projection, a requirement. This is a story about a choice. What would you do if your city's survival depended on a deal like this? Your answer matters. Let us know in the comments. So, the city did something that looks like genius. Or madness. It offered a 100-year water supply guarantee. A legal assurance that no matter how dry the desert gets, the factory's taps will never run dry. A shocking number of people watch our documentaries but forget to subscribe. If you believe these stories about the true cost of our modern world are critical, and they are, hitting that subscribe button ensures they keep getting told. It is the single most important thing you can do. Support this channel. Let's begin. The guarantee should have secured everything, but here's the part they are not advertising. The river that backs that guarantee is already overpromised. The deal requires sacrificing Arizona's own farmers to feed the machine, and the engineering solution meant to fix it all creates a toxic problem of its own. Did Phoenix just engineer its economic salvation, or did it just chain its destiny to a thirsty giant in a dying desert? Phoenix was never supposed to be this big. The city is an act of defiance against its own geography. It sits in the Sonoran Desert, a place of extreme heat and profound dryness. Annual rainfall is a fraction of what falls in more temperate climates. Summer temperatures don't just reach 110 degrees Fahrenheit, they can stay there for weeks. The land is ancient, baked, and unforgiving. For most of its history, Phoenix was a regional agricultural hub, made possible only by a web of canals first imagined by the Hohokam people 1,000 years ago and later rebuilt for a modern era. It was a city that lived in careful, precarious balance with its environment. Then came the 20th century. Air conditioning, interstate highways, and an insatiable American hunger for sunshine and open space. The population didn't just grow, it detonated. In 1950, Phoenix was home to roughly 100,000 residents. By 2020, the Phoenix-Mesa-Chandler metro area was a sprawling mega-region of nearly 5 million people. Today, that number continues to climb, pushing past 5.2 million. Millions of homes, thousands of businesses, all built on a landscape that fundamentally lacks the water to support them. That entire civilization depends on a single massive plumbing project. The Central Arizona Project, or CAP. A 336-mile canal that lifts water from the Colorado River and carries it across the desert to the state's population centers. It is the city's artery. And that artery is hardening. The Colorado River is the lifeline for 40 million people across the American Southwest, and it is in a state of terminal decline. The water was divided up in 1922 based on measurements from an abnormally wet period. The Colorado River Compact promised more water than the river actually carries in a normal year. For a century, the states have been drawing from a bank account that was never as full as the opening balance suggested. Climate change turned that chronic overdraft into an acute crisis. A megadrought, which began around the year 2000, is now understood to be the worst the region has seen in over 200 years. The vast reservoirs built to buffer against a few dry years, Lake Powell and Lake Mead, began to drain at a speed that horrified the engineers who managed them. In August 2021, the system hit a historic tipping point. Lake Mead's water level fell below 1,075 feet, triggering the first ever Tier 1 water shortage declaration by the federal government. For Arizona, the consequences were immediate and brutal. The state was forced to leave 512,000 acre-feet of its water in the river, an 18% cut to its total Colorado River supply, and a nearly 30% cut to the water flowing through the Cap Canal. Phoenix, a city built on a promise of endless growth, was now drawing its lifeblood from a river officially in crisis. And it was into this exact scenario that Phoenix invited the most water-intensive manufacturing process humanity has ever invented. It requires a truly staggering amount of water. What's another industry you've seen with such a relentless demand? The comments are a great place to pool our knowledge on this. The promise was economic resurrection. In May 2020, Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company, the undisputed global leader in chip production, announced it would build a $12 billion factory in North Phoenix. The news was hailed as a monumental win for American manufacturing. National security experts celebrated. After decades of watching advanced technology production move overseas, the United States was finally onshoring the most critical component of the modern economy. The CHIPS and Science Act, passed by Congress, poured billions in federal subsidies into the effort. Determined to break America's dependence on a single island, Taiwan, for its most advanced microchips, an island that lives under the constant threat of invasion, the geopolitical logic was ironclad. Build it here. Build it now, whatever the cost. So, the project grew. And grew. By December 2022, the initial $12 billion investment had ballooned to $40 billion for 2 factories, or fabs. Then, in April 2024, TSMC announced it would build a 3rd fab, pushing its total commitment to over $65 billion. The site in North Phoenix, near 43rd Avenue and Dove Valley Road, became one of the largest construction zones in the entire country, a city within a city, rising from the desert floor. But behind the triumphant headlines from Governor Katie Hobbs and Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego, a much quieter, more dangerous calculation was being made. Semiconductor manufacturing does not use normal water. It cannot. The water that comes out of a Phoenix tap is famously hard, full of minerals like calcium and magnesium. To you or me, it's just water, but to a 4-nanometer transistor, a single one of those microscopic mineral ions is like a boulder crashing into a Swiss watch. It means instant failure. Every drop of water TSMC uses must first be stripped of every conceivable impurity. It has to be processed into something called ultrapure water, or UpW. It is a liquid so aggressive in its purity that it will literally leach minerals from the pipes that carry it if they are not made of specialized plastic. Creating this perfect liquid is stunningly inefficient. For every 1,000 gallons of ultrapure water TSMC needs to rinse its silicon wafers, it must first purchase between 1,400 and 1,600 gallons of standard municipal water from the city of Phoenix. The rest is lost in the purification process, a concentrated brine of discarded minerals that has to be dealt with as industrial waste. The completed first fab alone currently uses about 75 million gallons of municipal water per day. When all 3 fabs are fully operational, internal projections estimate their peak thirst will climb to 17.2 million gallons per day, over 6 billion gallons a year, enough to supply tens of thousands of Arizona homes, all of it dedicated to giving microscopic silicon wafers a bath. This is the trade-off, food and homes for chips, happening right now in plain sight. If the gravity of that choice feels important, hitting the like button helps more people see it. Sharing this video with your family helps them understand the hidden costs behind the technology we all use every day. Mayor Kate Gallego, a key architect of the deal, was unflinching. Before we approve any proposal, she stated, we make certain there will be enough water for it for 100 years. A 100-year guarantee in a desert city in a megadrought, drawing from a dying river. It was a promise so audacious it bordered on fiction. But in Arizona, it was legally possible, and the reason why reveals the brutal social hierarchy of water in the American West. When the federal government mandated that Arizona cut its use of Colorado River water, the cuts were not applied evenly. They followed a century-old priority system embedded in Arizona water law, and that law was written to protect cities. The highest priority water rights belong to Native American tribes. The next highest belong to cities and industrial users. The last in line, the users with the most junior rights who take the first and deepest cuts, are the farmers. The 512,000-acre foot cut did not mean that faucets in Phoenix went dry. It meant that irrigation canals that fed farms in places like Pinal County, an agricultural belt between Phoenix and Tucson, did. These were not hobby farms. These were generational operations growing cotton, alfalfa, and feed for dairy cattle. Suddenly, their primary source of water, the Cap Canal, was shut off. They were forced to rely on groundwater, which is more expensive, less reliable, and ultimately finite. Fields that had been productive for decades were left to turn to dust. The state of Arizona, in effect, made a choice. It sacrificed its agricultural industry to keep the water flowing to its cities, and to the new $65 billion factory being built inside one of them. This wasn't a secret. It was policy. A similar dynamic had played out before, halfway across the world. During a previous drought in Taiwan, the government there literally ordered the irrigation shut off for 74,000 hectares of rice paddies just to ensure TSMC's fabs in Hsinchu Science Park had enough water. Food for chips. It is a brutal calculus, and it is the same exact calculus now playing out in the Sonoran Desert. The water security of 5.2 million Phoenix residents and the operational stability of TSMC is being paid for by farmers watching their livelihoods dry up and blow away. But even that sacrifice was not enough. Diverting water from agriculture could buffer the cities for a time. It could not, however, create new water. And the demand from TSMC was simply too large, too relentless. 17.2 million gallons a day represents a significant percentage of Phoenix's entire water portfolio, somewhere between 3% and 9% of the city's total supply, depending on the season and other demands. Adding such a massive new user to a system already under extreme stress was not sustainable, not without a technological miracle. So TSMC promised one. The plan is an engineering marvel. A closed loop, a system so efficient it borders on perpetual motion. In late 2025, TSMC officially broke ground on a new 15-acre facility on its North Phoenix campus, an industrial water reclamation plant, or IRWIP. The goal is something called near-zero liquid discharge. The concept is both simple and profoundly complex. Instead of using water once and then discharging it as wastewater, the IRWIP is designed to capture, treat, and reuse every possible drop again and again. The wastewater from the chip fabs, instead of being sent to the city's sewer system, will be piped directly to the reclamation plant. There, it will undergo an intensive process of membrane filtration and reverse osmosis, stripping out the chemical residues from the manufacturing process. The resulting clean water is then piped right back to the factory to be used again. The target efficiency is between 85% and 90%. If it works, it completely changes the math. Instead of needing 17.2 million gallons of fresh municipal water every day, the 3-fab complex would only need a fraction of that, somewhere around 1 to 1.2 million gallons per fab, to make up for losses. The rest would just cycle internally. Max Wilson, a water resources management advisor for the city of Phoenix, framed it as the next logical step in the city's long history of conservation. What this groundbreaking from TSMC represents, he explained, is us continuing down that path of making sure we can get the most out of every single drop that we are able to access. The IRWIP, scheduled to come online in 2028, is TSMC's answer to the Great Desert Paradox. It is the company's promise that it can have its factory and the desert can keep its water. 2, it is a clean, elegant, high-tech solution. And it is not that simple. The first problem is time. The reclamation plant is an answer for 2028 and beyond. The water drain is happening now. SMC's first fab is already operational. The second is nearing completion. For years, the facility will be operating at a massive water deficit, drawing millions of gallons a day from Phoenix's supply with no recycling system in place to offset it. Every day before that plant is switched on, the city's water account is being drawn down. The second problem is physics. Evaporation. TSMC's home base in Taiwan is a subtropical island with torrential rainfall and high humidity. Its factories there still require massive cooling towers, but the water loss to the air is less extreme. The Sonoran Desert is the opposite. The air is bone dry, and summer heat is relentless. The massive cooling towers needed to keep the factory from overheating will act like giant humidifiers for the desert, boiling off millions of gallons of water into the atmosphere. This water is not wastewater. It cannot be captured and recycled by the earth. It is simply gone. Vanished into the brutally hot Arizona sky. The 85-90% recycling figure sounds incredible until you realize it only applies to the water that actually makes it to the treatment plant. It does not apply to the water that disappears into thin air. But the most serious problem with the miracle solution is not the water that TSMC uses. It is what the company leaves behind. And that is a threat that no recycling plant was ever designed to solve. The conversation about TSMC has always focused on water quantity. How many gallons? How much of the city's supply? How much can be recycled? A coalition of labor unions and environmental activists is now forcing a different discussion. One about water quality. Judith Barish is the coalition director of CHIPS Communities United, a watchdog group formed to hold semiconductor companies accountable. Her focus is not on the water going into the plant, but the chemicals used inside it. Chip manufacturing is a dirty business. Wafers of silicon are subjected to a brutal sequence of etching, coating, and cleaning, using a cocktail of some of the most toxic substances known to science. Among them are FOS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They are often called forever chemicals because they do not break down in the environment or in the human body. Workers and neighbors need to know more about the hazardous substances that will be used, transported, and potentially released in their neighborhoods. Barish warned in a statement to the Phoenix City Planning Commission, without more information about the threat of chemical leaks and exposures, the commission should vote no. The the celebrated recycling plant, actually makes this problem worse. The process of reverse osmosis works by forcing contaminated water through a fine membrane. Pure water gets through. The contaminants, the minerals, the solvents, the FOS, are left behind in a highly concentrated toxic brine. TSMC's recycling miracle doesn't destroy the chemicals, it just concentrates them. What happens to that brine? Some of it can be further processed. Some of it may have to be trucked off-site to specialized hazardous waste facilities. The risk of spills, leaks, and groundwater contamination at every step of that process is real. A leak in the factory, a spill during transport, a failure at a disposal site, any of it could introduce these forever chemicals into the very soil and water Phoenix depends upon. Lenny Siegel, the executive director for the Center for Public Environmental Oversight, put the entire global tech race into a chilling perspective. The US and China, he stated bluntly, are racing to see who can destroy the environment most quickly. The story of TSMC in Arizona is no longer just about a thirsty factory in a dry desert. It is about a city that, in its rush to secure a technological prize, may have invited a hidden toxic liability, a problem that will remain in its soil and water, long after the last microchip has been shipped. I know, this is the second time I am bringing this up, but with stakes this high, making sure you are subscribed is the only way to guarantee you won't miss the next part of this story as it develops. It matters. The deal is done. The concrete is poured. The factory is real. TSMC is holding topping out ceremonies, celebrating construction milestones, and hiring thousands of workers. It is plowing ahead, backed by a $65 billion investment, the full faith of the U.S. government, and a 100-year water guarantee from the city of Phoenix. But the world the factory was planned for is changing faster than the engineers can build. The temporary truce on the Colorado River, the one that determined the current water cuts for Arizona, expires in 2026. All 7 states that depend on the river are now locked in a desperate, deadlock negotiation over who will bear the burden of the next round of cuts. And the next round will be deeper. The relatively wet winter of 2023 which gave Lake Mead a temporary reprieve, was followed by more dry years. The lake's level has resumed its downward march. The bathtub ring continues to grow. Each foot the reservoir drops increases the political pressure on states like Arizona to give up more water. What happens if a Tier 2 or a truly catastrophic Tier 3 shortage is declared? The priority system will hold. The farmers will be cut off completely. But at a certain point, there is not enough water to go around for anyone. At what point does the 100-year guarantee to an industrial giant become politically and physically impossible to honor? The city of Phoenix and its 5.2 million residents are now lashed to the fate of this factory. Its economic health is tied to TSMC's success. Its water security is gambled on TSMC's ability to perfect a recycling technology that is not yet operational and does not solve the entire problem. The factory stands as a monument to a series of cascading contradictions, a national security project that creates a local environmental crisis, a solution to a global supply chain problem that strains a regional water supply to its breaking point, a recycling plant that creates a concentrated toxic threat. Phoenix did not just attract a factory, it imported a dilemma. Wei, the chairman of TSMC, is responsible for navigating this maze. He must answer to his shareholders, to the U.S. government, and to the physical realities of the Sonoran Desert. He is betting that technology can solve the problems that technology creates, that an engineering fix like the ERP can defy the geologic and climatic destiny of the place his company chose for its American home. It is a bet made with other people's water. The factory in North Phoenix is not just making semiconductors. It is forging a new kind of future, one where the virtual world is sustained by the finite resources of the real one, where the demand for processing power is weighed against the right to clean water, and where the cost of a microchip is no longer measured in dollars, but in gallons. The water will continue to flow to TSMC. The guarantee will be honored. The city has no other choice. It has staked too much on this single project to let it fail. But the Colorado River does not care about guarantees. The megadrought does not acknowledge deals made in boardrooms, and the desert does not negotiate. The question is not whether the factory will get its water in the short term. It will. The real question is what will be left of Phoenix's water supply for the next generation after the world's most advanced factory has had its 100-year drink. The clock is running.